Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. Today's a hard one, but it's also an important one. My guests are Jon and Jenn joining me here in studio. They didn't ask to be here. I mean, they asked to be here in the studio, but no one asks to be in the cancer store, and no parent does, so you know where this is going. Their son, Zach, was an incredible kid, but he sadly lost his life to osteosarcoma. But his parents, to use the worst possible euphemism ever, made lemonade out of lemons and turned all of their grief into action by starting Zach's Bridge, a nonprofit that's helping families face the impossible, something they're calling pre-bereavement. Pre, like bereavement, but before bereavement. I like this. It's a very interesting way to think about how to plan for the worst from people who've been there. The worst peer support you could possibly ever hope to never need. Our conversation is raw, it's funny, it's heartbreaking. They're both advertising executives. They understand humor, dark humor. They understand media. They understand communications. We bond over a whole bunch of stuff. But ultimately, this is about Zach because, damn, this kid was one of a kind. So stick with me. You won't forget the episode. Let's get started. I don't really yell. I will give you an advance notice if I yell.
Okay.
I will.
Suck it up, princess.
Can I ask one other logistical question?
Yes.
When you ask us a question, are they already pointed at us individually, or you may ask us a question, and how do we determine who's going to answer it?
I think you're married. Figure it out.
Right, but I mean, do you want us
We're
to
rolling,
say?
by the way. This is great fodder.
We are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
It was the married question.
Yeah, it was a married question. You figured it out.
Okay.
How long have you been married?
Long time.
20.
Did you forget?
Yes.
22 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah, I'm 20 years this year.
Do something special.
We're going to just go on the couch and watch Not a 2-0. Maybe Who's the Boss?
Yeah.
She's really into like SVU now.
Is she younger than you?
She is 3 months older than me.
Okay.
You know, it's Tony Danza and Jason Priestley in our house all day, every day.
All right. Fair. I can't say that's the same here.
So how long have you been married?
Forever?
A long time. 22 years.
Okay, at least you had the number right.
Hopefully.
Yeah, but he has our anniversary date on his ring, but he's so old that he can't see the numbers anymore.
I know it was in August and around the 24th, but yeah.
I turned 50 and got readers. That was my gift.
That's like 40.
You made it to 50 without them? I'm impressed.
I had LASIK in 2008.
Got it.
And it wore off in one day.
Okay.
Money well spent.
Money well spent indeed. So I kind of can still see distance pretty well, but it's that, all right, this is the aggrieved aging Gen Xer rant here. Like, I can use them close up, but I need them far enough away where everything's blurry, and then I take them off and I still can't see.
Progressives for the win.
Progressives.
Oh, yeah.
I don't agree with that.
No?
I wear contacts with readers over them, but you're going to start getting the hearing loss soon, too. I make him get his hearing
tested. Is that like
tested.
tinnitus waiting to happen or actual hearing loss?
No, like actual hearing loss.
I could have selective hearing and don't hear certain things, perhaps. I'm just saying.
And you didn't have radiation.
Yeah, that's true. I did not.
I'm like some kind of like domino board waiting to fall down. I don't know how I'm still here.
We watch everything with subtitles these days.
Yes. Why is this a thing now?
But the young people do that too.
So
why is that a thing?
I don't know why the young people do it because I'm not young, but I mean, I watch a lot of British TV, like British crime dramas and stuff like that. And so I turn it on because sometimes I need to just figure it out and whatever. And then it just applies to everything else as well, with the exception of the live sports. You can't subtitles and live sports.
No, I come home and she's watching SVU or Not a Tuna or whatever it is. And like this, like, what they're saying. We can hear, it's a television.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the subtitles.
This portion of the show is called Gen X Therapy.
But then when you have dubbing, right, and subtitles, then it gets all wacky.
Oh, that's like Squid Game. It's crazy.
I've not watched Squid Game. It's on the list. It's coming soon.
Okay, my son is begging me. By the way, listeners, we're recording this in January, right after Squid Game Season 2 came out, and I haven't seen it yet. So hopefully I will have by the time you hear the show in February or March.
No, we haven't watched that, but I don't like the dubbing when you can't match what the person is saying to the words coming out.
Oh, the lip sync off?
It drives me crazy.
Yeah, can't do it. Just can't do it. Gives me a headache. Mm-hmm. So you're local. You're in New York. You came from where to be here?
We came from Sudbury, Massachusetts, which is right next to historic Concord.
Oh, the opposite of local. Okay.
Yes.
So took the train down today.
But we are both from New York originally.
Whereabouts?
I'm from Middletown, which is in Orange County.
I know where that is.
It's near Woodbury Commons.
Yes, it is. Just slightly south of Monticello.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I went to summer camp there for many years.
Did you go to Kutcher's?
I went to Kutcher's Camp Anawana, not the Sports Academy.
Aha.
Yes.
So my great-grandparents had a hotel in the Catskills.
Which one?
It was called the Midwood. It burned down. And
they all burned down. Neville burned down.
Right. So, and we used to go to all the hotels in the Catskills because my grandparents were friendly with all of them. And then I went to college with one of the granddaughters of Helen Kutcher.
Wow.
And so I went to a really fun non-dairy wedding at Kutcher's many years ago.
Non-dairy wedding?
Non-dairy
That's right.
wedding.
Super kosher.
Super kosher, which was fine until you got to dessert. Because non-dairy frosting on a wedding cake, not worthwhile.
It's like the Manischewitz Passover crap. It's disgusting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where does your last name come from? Wall.
So Wall is Ellis Island. So it's Russian.
Right.
When
Valavoluchki or something?
No. So the story that I've been told is that when my father's family came over, my father's father came in through Ellis Island. I don't know how old he was, early 1900s. And they said Vol. V-O-L-L.
Okay.
Right? And they wrote down Wall, and there you go.
There you go. Nice and simple.
And every now and then you get like British or Irish people that are named Wall, and they're like, "Oh, are we related?" I'm like, pretty sure we're not.
Pretty sure you're not. What was your maiden name?
My maiden name was Kleeman. So
upgrade, side grade, downgrade?
Surprisingly, people ask me how to spell Wall more than they ever asked me to spell Kleeman. Yes. Swear to God.
This poor country. Our species. What the hell happened?
Uh-huh.
All right, I have to pivot to an Ellis Island story. My grandmother came over on the last boat from London before FDR shut down the country during the Holocaust. And she came there. Her name was Hannah Gittel Begun. You will never be able to guess what name they decided that made sense to. Ida Banner.
Close.
How do you get from Hannah Gittel Begun to Ida Banner? I have no idea. But Vol to Wall kind of makes sense.
Right. Yeah. My the ones that own the hotel, they were Poles here, which was shortened from Pohalski when they came through Ellis Island.
Right.
So that kind of made sense, but I don't know. But I took his last name because it was shorter. It was much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope you're down here for more than just coming to the show.
Well, we came down here initially to come to this show, but we're going to see some family, some friends, and we're going to have a jam-packed Saturday, actually. We're also looking forward to having some good meals in New York as well. So.
Oh, my God. This is the place to have meals.
Yeah.
We're kind of food snobs, so.
You should be. Well, you're from down here. You live up there. You probably miss down here. Bagels, pizza, Chinese food.
I mean, we have it all. Bagels in Boston, not as good, right?
Well, you said near Concord, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go with probably not the best bagels in Concord.
No.
I don't think they have bagels there, do they?
Yeah, you can get them, but they're not really
You can
New
get
York bagels.
like lenders in the
oh God, lenders.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So no, but we have a couple of good meals we have reservations for, and I rate conferences that we go to for the nonprofit on what city they're in as how much of a foodie city it is. So our favorite last year was definitely going to Chicago for a conference, and we don't have a good foodie location this year.
Atlanta should be good, we think.
Yeah.
Which conference you going to in Atlanta?
Atlanta is the Association of Pediatric Oncological Social Workers.
AOSW? APOSW.
Yes.
Yeah, I keynoted that a while ago. They had one in Bar Harbor, Maine. It was like terrifying to get there because there's like one airport that's the size of this table, and you think you're going to die.
But it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous up there. Gorgeous up there. Yeah. I'm glad they're still around. They do really good work.
Yeah. They do.
I was going to say, how'd you get involved? But clearly we're going to get to that in the second half of the show.
Let's get there.
All the groups you never wanted to be a part of, but they're kind of family right now.
100%.
So again, we never asked to be born of our condition. I was told that once. And you never want to enter the shit happens store because you don't go to college for it in advance. And here we have the worst kind of tragedy. You lost your son. And my in-laws lost their son. And I work, as most people know, in oncology for 20 years now. And there's never a good Hallmark card for any of this.
No.
But I think it's worth getting to. We'll put links to Zach's story. And of course, just the name Zach hits me home clearly too. But let's talk about him.
I mean, so Zach was an amazing kid, but he also had a bunch of challenges out of the gate. So he had really extreme ADHD and executive function or executive dysfunction. And because of all of that, his evolution was a little bit delayed, and he had a really hard time kind of making friends and fitting in. Like team sports weren't really his thing. And, eventually he found things that he loved that were more individual. Early on, he did Taekwondo and loved like doing that, a great individual sport, and loved things like, fishing, and was pretty good at that too. And then really started to evolve into, he loved vehicles, like anything with like a vehicle.
Gearhead?
He total gearhead. Like,
awesome.
Like, I don't know half of it, but there's a story when he was sick where he got his own private supercar show. Like we're talking Lamborghinis, Ferraris, like all these crazy cars. He went like, cops don't listen to the show, right?
I can't say either way.
Well,
I'm going to say no just to finish your sentence.
All right, there you go. So he got picked up at our house in a 2019 McLaren with the doors that go up and all that. And they went 160 miles per hour on the highway for just a short period of time and all that. But amazing. Like he loved all that stuff. And we had no idea if he actually knew what he was talking about.
Did he get pulled over?
No.
But that's where the cancer card comes in.
Right. And
Zach was a huge fan of the cancer card. He would be like, you got to play the cancer card. I want the cancer perks. Like he ate that up.
Never wore a hat to cover his bald head. Yeah, used it as...
That was Zach.
Yeah.
We had a cancer card at Stupid Cancer about a decade ago. We physically printed like plastic cards with the cancer card on them with like a fake magnetic strip on the back. And it was just the greatest novelty.
He would have loved that. I mean, we went to a baseball game at one point at Fenway, and we were driving, trying to park. And this was after he'd had his leg amputated. So he was in a wheelchair, and we couldn't find anywhere to park. And he goes, we got to play the cancer card. And he sticks his head out the window of this garage and is like, I have cancer. Can we park here?
It worked.
Balls of steel. God bless. Wow.
Everywhere was like no parking left. And the guy was like, yeah, sure. Come on in.
And, other things about Zach that are amazing, like he really loved animals and horses, loved to ride horses. And as a kid with social and emotional challenges, the horses in particular gave him so much comfort and confidence and really became part of his, his story and his growth. He loved dogs. We still have, dogs today. We got a puppy right after he passed away. Zach's middle name was Adam, and the puppy's name is Adeline, or Addie for short, and has a lot, as Jen will say, Zach had a lot of Addie in her. But, the horses is just amazing.
Addie has a lot of Zach in her.
Whatever. Sorry, I got it wrong.
That's fine.
It's all good.
Have you met him?
Once or twice.
I just met him and I expected that.
Once or twice.
Yeah.
He's not the dog person. Zach and I were the dog people. And so Addie came about because the night we had just buried him, and I was online looking at puppies because Zach and I did that constantly while he was sick. And I found this puppy, and John said, I'm not looking at it the next morning. And it was the day of his celebration of life. And we sort of both mentioned it in our eulogies for Zach. And I sat down, my mother goes, you're getting a puppy? I said, apparently. And we went and got her 3 days later.
How could you say no to that face? You just can't.
No.
Let me ask you then, this all goes back to how do we make this a relatable, frustrating conversation more than it is. How long did it take him to get properly diagnosed?
Actually, pretty quick, because he was pretty far along.
Okay.
Right? So frequently, Zach had osteosarcoma, a form of bone cancer. And Jen, jump in here if I miss anything or screw it up. Jen's more the medical person than I am. But
fact checker.
Yeah, exactly. So, he complained about pain in his knee or below his knee. It was right over kind of the Christmas break at the end of 2020. And then at that point, he was in a therapeutic boarding school that was great for him. And he was really making friends and really kind of coming into his own at 15 years old.
It wasn't one of those bad therapeutic boarding schools.
Like Annie? That was an orphanage. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was thinking more like the Paris Hilton ones that we all
or Xavier School for the Gifted.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a separate podcast.
That's a separate podcast. But Zach was a kid who would complain if he had a hangnail. And Zach had his own personal physician because my dad is a retired pediatrician. So he would call my dad and say, Grandpa, such and such hurts. And he was home over the holidays and he called my dad and said, Grandpa, my knee hurts. And so we went over and my dad examined him. And like every other pediatrician would have done, Zach was in a growth spurt. He said, I'm pretty sure this is growing pains. I think let's give you some ibuprofen and I think you'll be fine. And he went back to school. And at that point, they had a really strict quarantine. They were doing really great in terms of keeping COVID out of the school. And the nurse called and said, he's still complaining. And he actually has a lump on his leg now. Are you okay if we take him to the pediatrician? And I said, sure.
The other pediatrician.
Well, a random.
Not Dr. Grandpa.
It was not Dr. Grandpa. And it was the Friday. We just had the 4th anniversary of it because it was the Friday before Martin Luther King Day. And this totally strange pediatrician called me on the phone and said, they'd called and said they wanted an x-ray. And they called back and they said, I think your son has osteosarcoma. And I my heart stopped, and he should not have said that. He should have said something more to the and
a little more empathetic,
a little bit more
sugarcoating on purpose.
Like, I think he may have something. You should have it evaluated. And I said, could you hold on a second? I need to conference my dad in. Mm-hmm. And a couple hours later, my dad called and said, yeah, it's something. And my dad will say to this day, he had not seen a tumor that large.
Wow.
And Zach's tumor was about the size of a hot dog bun. So it was about 6 inches below his knee. And so we brought him home and we took him to an orthopedic surgeon the following Tuesday because it was a holiday weekend. And I remember my dad looking at the x-ray just widely, and he had no words. Mm-hmm. And so the surgeon said, yes, I think that's what this is. And we had to have a bunch of other tests, including a CAT scan of his lungs. And I remember at the time that my uncle, who's also a physician, he's a radiologist, texted me and said, he's going to be fine. The prognosis of 5 years for osteosarcoma is 75%. And that's for localized osteosarcoma. And
when there were Mets.
There were so many Mets because the orthopedist called right after that. He said, there's so many Mets, I can't quantify them.
My goodness.
So this was not new.
No, okay.
And by January 29th, he was officially diagnosed. That was his first day at Dana-Farber. I think the following week we went in and he got his port and we started the journey. And
so it took about 2 weeks to be diagnosed,
which is rare. I mean, most people.
That is short by decent standards. Yeah.
But that's if you ask his oncologist, she will say he had some of the most aggressive osteosarcoma I've ever seen.
But undetectable.
At the time, yeah. I mean, he just had knee pain, which is very, very common. That a primary care pediatrician will say, I think this is growing pains. Let's give it a month or two. But his was so aggressive. And she used that word a lot during our journey that things moved very quickly.
I think I told you on our phone call a couple of weeks ago that my brother-in-law who passed away from Ewing sarcoma had no symptoms, but he fell on a skateboard accident. And that's when they just did a regular routine check in the hospital and found this massive thing on his sacrum.
Right. And I think that's often what happens. One of the things when Zach first got diagnosed, at the time he'd had a bedroom that had a loft bed. And so we knew that wasn't going to be a good thing because he basically had a fracture waiting to happen because he had this giant tumor. And so we said we were going to get him a bigger bed. And then he looked at us and he goes, can I get a bigger TV too?
Nice. But I like this kid.
Well, so when we told Zach he had cancer, his first question was, can I swear now?
You raised him right.
Yep. And
gearhead.
Yep.
Cancer card. God knows his merch.
Yep. So he swore a blue streak, and there's a sign in his room that says maybe swearing will help. It didn't. And then his second question was, do I still have screen time limits? It wasn't, am I going to die? Am I going to lose a limb? Mm-hmm. He was like full on literal. And, and so we said, obviously you can't do chemo and not have intense amounts of screen time, thank God. But that was what Zach was focused on. He was on the day-to-day literal logistics, getting him to go for chemo treatment, getting any child, but any teenager to get up at the crack of dawn for chemo treatment is hard at best. But he'd be like, oh, we have to be in the chair by this time because there's a live stream. Live stream? Is that? Yeah. A live stream of a YouTuber playing video games that he was obsessed with. But he also used to walk into clinic. Am I allowed to swear?
Fuck yes.
Okay, good. Because he'd walk into the clinic at Dana-Farber, which was all pediatrics, and he'd say at the top of his lungs, I fucking hate this place. And all the teenagers in the room would be like, yeah, that's what he said. But Jon and I got to a bereavement group not long after he passed away that was families that had been treated at Boston Children's and Dana-Farber. And one of the moms said, I remember your son.
He was the one that shouted epithets.
Actually, it wasn't. Thank God, because I was appalled. I was like, "You do?" And she said, "Oh yeah, he did so great with his prosthetic one day." And I was like, "Oh okay,
Yeah, not that.
not that."
Well, let's take a quick break and come back because sad he passed, but I'm in love with this kid. So we'll be right back after these great messages from God knows who.
We see you getting after your fitness goals. But what about those money goals? You can count on Credit Karma for a clear view of your finances and your progress, helping you see results so you can keep checking off those financial personal bests and find your way to money. Progress never felt so good. Download the Intuit Credit Karma app and start achieving your money goals today. Intuit Credit Karma. Karma you can count on.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
I said at the top of the show, we never asked to be born of our condition, and clearly, having worked with many bereaved parents, and it's never okay. But I'm so enamored with the fact that there was levity in all of this.
There was a lot of levity,
and I think you just have to have that. And so many people, unfortunately, it's hard to have that, and you made it happen. And he was the spark from that.
We had, we had so many amazing conversations with him, right? The one thing we were lucky is Zach was sick during COVID, so there was never any traffic going back and forth to the hospital. But,
one benefit
only
of COVID.
only.
But,
Only.
so many just conversations. I'm thinking, just one in particular, and I can't translate it here, but just like where we're just rolling, it's just hilarity, right? And because we're all inappropriate and just silly, right? And you guys had some amazing conversations.
We did on the way home from chemo, not so much.
Well,
something else was going on.
Yeah.
And Zach was always gung ho when we'd go in for chemo. One day he said, "Mommy, I really want a Big Mac for lunch." I said, "Are you sure you want that?" He said, "Yep." And I went, I got him a Big Mac, and we're driving home, and he's like, "Why did you let me do that?" But, I like to say those were 10.5 months that we got him home. If you're going to try and find a silver lining, he would have been at school. Mm-hmm. So we got to be with him every day. Now, was he great every day? No, he was still Zach. Cancer or not, there was still a lot of Zach there. But someone asked me recently to tell like a humorous story about Zach. And I find it very difficult at times to tell stories that aren't based around that last year of life because they were so intense. And some of them were great. I mean, you go back to what Jon was saying about when Zach got to go for a ride at 160 miles an hour. And we went into clinic the next Monday and he tells his oncologist, she looks at me and she goes, he didn't get permission to do that. But
I'm sorry, what?
But she was totally kidding. But one of the other very funny things, so this was probably, about a month before he died, we had people over. We had built this deck for Zach and we had people over for drinks and it was a beautiful night. And he was like, we had margaritas. He's like, well, can I try one? And
God, I'm more in love every second.
It gets better. So, we said yes and he tried it and tried other things.
Wait, he was how old?
16 and a half.
Okay, even better.
Right. So we go into clinic that Monday. He looks at me and goes, Mommy, we have to tell them. And I was like, tell them what? And he said, you know what we did over the weekend. And so I said, well, you can tell them. And he goes, I had a margarita. And his oncologist and the oncologist nurse practitioner, he's waiting for them to be like, what did you do? And one goes, frozen or rocks? And one goes, salted or not? And the other one goes, did you like it? But that turned into this thing. He was like, well, they're letting me have stuff. Can I try stuff? And about a week or two later, we went to see his friends at school and we sort of sat off to the side and the kids are all sitting around the table and Zach's going, yeah, I had a margarita and I tried this and I tried this. And these are kids that have social and emotional challenges. And one of his friends goes, hey, Zach, you should get your parents to get you the tequila that has the worm in it. I was like, Parent of the year.
Yeah, you keep slapping.
I know. I just
now you got to say the sentence again.
And I was like, he's sitting there and he's talking about all these alcohols and how, and the kid says, yeah, get your parents to get you the tequila with the worm in it. And I was like, this is not Parent of the Year material. Like this is,
it so is.
It would be, but.
I mean, at that point...
You're just nodding your head, Jon, the whole time?
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, at that point, we knew he was terminal. Zach knew his cancer was never going to go away. We never really talked about kind of what was going to happen, but he knew he was going to have his cancer forever. But we wanted to make sure, why not? Let him do what he wants, right? We'd be crazy not to. COVID put some limits on that. But I think that's good parenting.
Yeah.
But if somebody thinks it's bad parenting, so be it, right?
Should have taken him to Vegas.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, so there were a lot of times where I, more than Jon and more than my parents, wanted to stop treatment because Zach was very sensitive to chemo.
Right.
It wasn't working. It made him sick. The second set of chemo agents actually gave him brain encephalopathy, and he spent July 4th weekend in the ICU, and we weren't sure if he was going to make it. And
Can I just add something there quickly?
No, okay. She's talking.
Yeah, right. No, I mean,
been interrupting me for 22 years.
That's good. Keep going.
Anyway, so, I think the way that I describe it is Zach's chemo, which is supposed to cure him, almost killed him, right? And I just want to say that really succinctly because that's how serious this is. You sign off on these waivers like this could cause more cancer.
Right.
Or death. And I like to say, another weird Gen X reference, there haven't been that many advances in treatment for osteosarcoma. And so the treatments that Zach received were over 40 years old. And so for the Gen Xers, they are the same age as the yellow plastic Walkmans that we had. They haven't improved. Cassette tapes, the black or the yellow sport Walkman, they have not advanced in that many years. They're not pediatric specific. They're not children are little adults, so we just dose it that way.
12% of everyone's Googling what the hell's a Walkman.
Easily.
Yeah. What's a cassette tape?
Only 12. But
I think most of my listeners are grumpy, aging, achy Gen Xers.
Excellent. But he, and I always said, well, if it was a different time, we would have stopped treatment if we could have taken him to place. He was obsessed with this one supercar called a
Koenigsegg.
I called it
my son's a gearhead too.
I called it the Königsberg. And he got
more Jewish,
a little bit
less German.
He got to see one in person when the day that he was in the McLaren.
The supercar tour. They had one in the McLaren garage.
Awesome. But I would have loved to have taken him to whichever country those come from, or go to the Ferrari museum. Zach would ask for things.
You guys are near the Bugatti. There's a Bugatti. The only Bugatti dealership in East Coast
Connecticut.
is in Connecticut.
Right. We never got there.
Okay.
Right.
But
So with Zach's prosthetic, he asked, they asked him, what do you want? What do you want on the upper half, the part that goes on his leg, because they amputated his leg above the knee? And then what do you want kind of covering the metal part on the bottom? And so Zach was wearing a Bugatti t-shirt one day in the store. And so they not in the store, in the prosthetist office. And so they took that t-shirt and they molded it onto the upper part. It became the
skin of the socket.
God. And then
that was a special t-shirt because that came from like some Eastern Bloc nation that I had to order off of eBay or Etsy or something because he wanted one. And my goal in that year, if Zach asked for something, it was the year of saying yes.
Yes.
If I could make it happen for him, we did.
And then the bottom half of it, there was a cover that was made that it was like red and black and had the Bugatti logo. We can send you a picture. It's super cool. And it was totally unique.
So then you became the accidental nonprofit founders. How long did that take?
Yeah, I don't know if that's
well, we did a lot of things the year Zach passed after he passed that you probably shouldn't do. We got Addie. I went back to school.
Well, you got the dog.
We did.
That you couldn't say no to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But we decided to start Zaxbridge after I can't even tell you how many people said don't start a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. And I went back to school. I've always wanted a clinical degree. And so I started an MSW program at Syracuse right after his birthday in May that year. And that was the first year that we were obviously celebrating his birthday without him. And the only thing we didn't do was like go buy a big piece of property or a boat at least a dozen people we talked to said, don't start a nonprofit. Yeah. And I get that. But
so you were warned. We
were, and we have warned others who have come since then and said, I want to do something. But we felt so strongly. And again, our experience with cancer treatment for our child happened during COVID, which was a very different kind of experience.
Yes.
When we became bereaved parents was the first time that we found a community. And people would say, well, didn't you go in the kitchen? Didn't you talk in the waiting room? And I said, well, the kitchen was closed. You went in, you went out, and you hoped you didn't get COVID. That was the goal whenever you went to clinic.
Right.
So we didn't talk to anyone probably for a couple months.
You were in hazmat suits the whole time too, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can't take anything off. We had to get special permission to have more than one of us come to clinic with him. It was a very different time.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have support. I looked for it beforehand. Jon looked for it at different times. We were very different in the way we processed his disease. I spent my whole career in hospital administration. I call myself the family realist. Others in the family would call me the family pessimist. And so that is Jon nodding his head for those of you who can't see anything because he's agreeing. I wanted to talk to someone who lost their child to osteosarcoma the day he was officially diagnosed. I didn't want surprises. I wanted to know what to expect. And we couldn't find it. It didn't exist. Most disease-specific organizations don't want to connect families with a family who's lost their child because they will lose hope.
Right.
So when we thought about what do we want to do, and so many people when they lose a child to cancer want to do something, right? Whether they're raising money or whatever they're doing,
right,
volunteering. And as we got into it, we said we want to go where there's nothing, where there's a need that we experience, where
white space.
Yes, where we can make a difference, right? Because so many people are doing amazing things, and so much progress has been made in research, in treatment, right? And there's a decent number of resources even for bereavement. But the area where we felt, really could be hugely impactful is going into this area that we call pre-bereavement. From the time you've been pre-bereavement.
You must be marketers.
I am.
Yeah. Well
recoverings.
I'm not that dumb.
Yeah.
But pre-bereavement. Wow. I've not heard that. Well done.
And it is different than anticipatory grief, which is a big thing.
So pre-bereavement, right, for us was the time that we were told or come to grips with the fact that Zach was terminal. Right. And between that point and the end, right? People say, oh, that's anticipatory grief. It is, but it also is something else.
You're talking about like practical preparations for the inevitable.
Right. So you're grieving the inevitable loss, right? You're grieving that and all that. But here's a couple other things that are different in that time period outside of just that dealing with that loss. It's for you as a parent.
It's joyrides. It's tequila.
So, but kind of. I'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
But it's everything changes for you at that point in time. How you interact with your friends and your family, how you think about work, how you think about life. All of that changes, and dealing with all of that, thinking about not only the loss of your person, in this case, our son, but thinking about how do I deal with palliative care, hospice, doing a tissue donation, because people won't talk about it, including healthcare providers. They're scared of it, right? They don't talk about funerals, right? And dealing with all of that stuff. Right. And then however,
the real world stuff, the practical outside the walls.
The icky.
Yeah.
And I went to Zach's oncologist about a month before he died, and I said, I want something good to come of this. And she said, oh, thank God you said that to me. I hate having the autopsy conversation with families because I've already told their family I can't save their child, and now I'm asking them to do more. And she went over his autopsy with us after it came back, and she practices medicine differently because of what she saw in Zach's autopsy. And the same thing happened when I went to her about hospice. People say, well, what would you have done differently? Would you have stopped treatment? I said, well, no, he should have been on palliative care from the day that he was diagnosed. He could have spent most of his journey, if not all of it, on pediatric hospice. And when I went to her with this,
but hospice is like a sticky name. It's very misinterpreted.
Hospice, speaking of marketing, hospice needs a PR makeover.
Yes.
And she said, I don't know if he can still get treatment and be on hospice. Now, concurrent treatment is the standard across every state in this country today for pediatric hospice. This is someone she's world renowned. She's an expert in her field. She didn't know that. I only know that now because I work in pediatric palliative care and hospice. And so I know that you can have both. But had he had that, he might have had less trips to clinic, less times to walk into clinic and swear his head off.
Yeah.
Because clinic visits were never 20 minutes. You were there anywhere from 2 to 13 hours.
Yeah.
And he hated it. He hated wearing a mask. He hated everything about it. And so people don't know, and families that we work with now will say, well, is it time for me to consider this? And I said, absolutely. But currently, the only psychosocial standard that truly exists when it comes to palliative care at the outset of treatment is for leukemia patients who are eligible for a bone marrow transplant. Zach's prognosis at diagnosis was 20%. There are families with different kinds of brain tumors, such as DIPG, that have a 0% prognosis. They still are not offered palliative care and hospice at the outset of treatment.
So the core mission is?
The core mission of Zach's Bridge is to provide one-to-one peer support from bereaved parents that have gone through this, whether you're you're in that pre-bereavement stage or you're in bereavement, right? We looked for people, we couldn't find them. Someone who can give that parent some comfort, some guidance, some support in a way that no one else can because they've gone through it, right? And helping them maximize that time during bereavement and get a little bit of solace and have that cascade down to their child, or hearing from somebody that, hey, you know what? It's okay that you think you're going crazy when you're bereaved, because you're not, but you need to hear that other people are going through this, right? That connection you can't find any other way besides a one-to-one connection. There are lots of great Facebook groups and things like that, but you just don't know what you're going to get there. You don't know if you're going to get trained peers. You don't know if you're going to be a victim of the algorithm and not get an answer, or get an answer that doesn't make any sense. So we want to fill that gap, right? That's why we're called Zach's Bridge. We bridge that gap in the continuum of care where there was nothing. Right. And Zach also loved vehicles, and those go over bridges. So there you go.
Apparently they go 160 miles an hour on the highway too.
Yeah. Maybe not over that bridge, but yes.
Very Dukes of Hazzard going on there.
Yes. Just some good old boys. Never meaning no harm.
He didn't like that show. John tried with him.
I did try that.
It did not age well.
It didn't hold up. No.
Dukes of Hazzard, hasn't aged well.
It did not age well. You tried
Love Boat hasn't aged well.
Knight Rider, you tried with him too. And
that's my ringtone.
Yes.
Yeah. Zach did not like Knight Rider.
Sacrilege.
Yeah.
You do what you can. All right. Hot take question. Military terms in cancer. Fighting, battle, winning.
Warrior.
What do you think? Subjective?
Hard question, because I think I use those words a lot. I have more issue with either you're a warrior or you're an angel. Isn't there, like, angel not a military term?
Right.
So isn't there a better way to describe it that would
But
be
angels
more...
are dead. Angels are spirit.
Right.
Yes.
Angels
But-
aren't breathing.
But you're either a warrior or you're an angel.
You're fighting or you're not.
I'm all for metaphor of your choice. This was a big conversation in the 2000s when we had survivorship, right? Fought battle, lost the battle. Did you not fight hard enough? Like, what's going on with that? But again, your metaphor of choice, your life, whatever helps you sleep at night.
I like journey. Journey is a word I use a lot.
Yeah. I don't really mind the terms. I don't love them, but I don't have better words to describe it. Zach was definitely fighting. We were definitely fighting. We're doing everything we can to push something away, right? And so I'm not opposed to it, but I see why people don't like it, and I just wish I had better alternatives.
But I think there's just not the right word for it. You know,
Right.
we talk a lot in the bereavement community. There's not a word for being a bereaved parent. You know, if you have lost a child, if you've lost a spouse, you're a widow or you're a widower. If you've lost your parents, you're an orphan. There is not a word in the English language that describes...
Wait, do we need more labels, or like do you just want to feel like you're a part of something?
It's 2025. What do you think?
We only have labels these days.
But it makes, for me...
Koenigsegg and Königsberg.
Exactly. But it makes me feel off to the side and outside
Right.
of... And we talk a lot about, or I especially talk a lot about death cooties or grief cooties, going back to Gen X references. When you have a child that you are going through this with, you can have wonderful support systems, but there are times when there are families who you may have been close to before this battle journey, whatever you want to call it, who have children of a similar age. And they look at you and it's like, well, if their child could get this freak thing, does that mean my kid could too? And
Right.
they move away as opposed to moving towards you.
Well, I was diagnosed in the 90s when cancer was radioactive, magnetic, transmissible.
Yeah, it's like it's contagious. Like,
Yes, I had contagious brain cancer.
Right, my child got osteosarcoma. Yeah, that means if I could get it, your kid, if you get too close to me, you're gonna go through this experience as well.
And I picked up paper clips with my fingers because I was
impressive.
magnetic.
Did you glow too?
I didn't quite glow. Not like the ones you remember. The ones you cracked them open and
Yes.
I wasn't quite that. More like a neon T-shirt.
You could have
but
been
that
an
was-
X-Man.
Yes, it could have been.
That was the color of at least 2 of Zach's chemo agents.
Yeah. Remember Freezy Freakies?
Yes.
All right, everyone's going to go. All right, you win. Jen, you win. Freezy Freakies, for anyone that's nodding their head, forget, you know what it is. They were snow gloves that when it got colder, these neon images appeared out of them. They probably gave you cancer,
Right.
but who cared?
You had those with your moon boots. And
Right,
yes.
exactly. All right, lightning round. I asked AI if the two of you were some kind of film or television pop culture duo, who would you be?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
You can guess. It's going to be wrong because I didn't.
Wonder Twins?
Nope. Good guess though.
I'm really striking out here. I got nothing. I want to know what AI said.
AI said that you are Coach Eric and Tammy Taylor from Friday Night Lights.
I like that.
But let me say that again. AI said that you are Coach Eric and Tammy Taylor from Friday Night Lights.
I like that.
I do too.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Here's it's a rationale. Like the Taylors, Jon and Jenn seem to have a strong partnership rooted in love, purpose, and the ability to lift others up even during their own tragic struggles.
Pretty good. We'll take it.
So this is not James Cameron Robot Apocalypse level AI. This is decent AI. It's a good use, right?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, all right. Where can people learn more about Zach's Bridge?
So obviously you can go to our website, Zach's Bridge, ZACH. S Bridge,
no
yes,
apostrophe in the URLs.
If you misspell it and go to ZACKS
Okay.
Bridge, then you can you'll get there as well on social, on Instagram, on Facebook, and LinkedIn.
And of course,
Coming
we
soon
hope
on
you,
Blue Sky as well.
Yes.
Oh, Blue Sky. Well, we hope you don't need the service, but heaven forbid you unfortunately do. I'm happy you've chose to, and I'll cat poster the fuck out of this. Lemonade from Lemons. Terrible shit. I'm so sorry, but you're here. You're making the most of it, and you were born of the condition you did, the club you didn't ask to join.
Absolutely.
The water's fine.
Absolutely. And we say to people all the time, we have a secret handshake. We could teach it to you, but you can't use it.
The space goes down, down, baby, down, down the roller coaster. Sweet, sweet, baby, sweet, sweet, don't let me go. Shimmy, shimmy, cocoa bop, shimmy, shimmy, rock. Shimmy, shimmy, cocoa bop, shimmy, shimmy, rock. I met a girlfriend, a Trisket. She said a Trisket, a biscuit, ice cream, soda, pop, vanilla. Ooh, Shalita, walking down the street.
But we can talk to any family that has lost a child to cancer. And it doesn't matter if our kids are the same age, the same kind of cancer, same place in the world. It's a connection that I wish we'd never had. And I say this to people when I meet them in this world. I wish we'd never met, but I'm glad we're in each other's life now.
And with that, Jon and Jenn Val, thank you so much for coming Out of Patience.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Out of Patience with Matthew Zachary is a production of Matthew Zachary Worldwide. The executive producer is Matthew Zachary. It is mixed and edited by Kyle Moore. If you like the show, ratings and reviews are always welcome wherever you get your podcasts. If you have guest suggestions or would like to learn more about sponsorship opportunities, email podcast@matthewzachary.com. For more information about Matthew Zachary and Matthew Zachary Worldwide, visit matthewzachary.com.